Same chapter, Matthew 26, verse 69. Alright, before we get to here, what just happened is, right after this has happened, they come and they arrest Jesus. Judas betrays Jesus. And they arrest Jesus, and all the disciples, they scatter. Alright, and they bring Jesus into the city, they bring him to a courtyard. So imagine a U here, alright? So imagine this building, imagine that back wall, it was not there, alright? So imagine that whole back wall is gone, it was smashed. And you have this kind of U area. Alright, so we have this courtyard here. And inside this courtyard, there are all these elders and teachers of the law. We have these Sanhedrin here. They're like the guys who are like the lawyers, kind of, you would say so. And there are all these people here. You got the high priest, you got the Sadducees, the Pharisees, all these people who study the law and know the law and have a thing against Jesus. They're here to put Jesus on a trial in the middle of the night. And they kind of set him up to where he can't even escape this trial. He can't win no matter what. So pretty much on the first bat, this is a very unfair trial. Christ cannot escape. And so he is here in the middle of the night. Everyone's here. They're spitting on him. They're beating him. And then outside of that courtyard, you have people gathered around. They're wondering what's going on. They're seeing what is happening here. They're seeing this Jesus who's being put on trial. And so there's that courtyard there. All right, so this is where we find Peter. So imagine Peter's outside over there, Jesus over here. All right, so he's in this courtyard. And it says here, now Peter was sitting out in the courtyard, and a servant girl came to him. You also were with Jesus of Galilee, she said. But he denied it before them all. I don't know what you're talking about. All right, so Jesus is on trial. People are gathered around. And we got to give Peter credit one more time. He's very bold, very brave. He's the only one there out of all the disciples. Like, he's out there. But we see that they start to weed him out. We see that people see him. They're like, hey, man, like that dude right there, like, I've seen him with Jesus. And so this girl goes up to him and says, you know what? I've seen you with Jesus. And he says, you know, I don't know what you're talking about. It says here, then he went out to the gateway. So he's going to step out further from Christ. He begins to step farther away from the courtyard. And as he goes farther away into the crowd, it says this, where another girl saw him and said to the people there, this fellow was with Jesus of Nazareth. He denied it again with oath and said, I do not know this man. But as he steps farther away from Jesus in the courtyard, another girl sees him and says, you know what? Instead of just talking to him, she says to everybody around him, you know, everybody around here, look, that guy right there. This dude was with Jesus. So now it's not just a one-on-one, like, I know you're with Jesus. Now it's like everybody, hey, look, that guy right there, I saw him with Jesus. And at this moment, with all the people, all eyes on him, Peter denies who Christ is. He says, I don't know this man. I don't know what you're talking about. And then after a little while, those standing there went up to Peter and said, surely you're one of them, for your accent gives it away. Then he began to call down curses on himself, and he swore to them, I do not know this man. And so it says, after a little while, so they had a little time to sit there and think, all right? And they said, you know what, you were with Jesus because your accent gives it away. You see, because Jesus and them, they're all from Galilee. And Galilee is like the ghetto of like ancient Israel, if you didn't know that. And like, you guys know people from the ghetto, they talk a certain way, right? Yeah. Like, you know, they have that street vernacular, and I'm not going to try to recreate it, but like, I can even think for myself, like, people from certain places, you talk the same way. Like, I remember when I went to Toccoa, I came back home, and my family, they're like, oh, thank you. Yeah, just eat. Yeah, my family, they're like, dude, you talk different, man. Like, you just say things different. I'm like, I don't know what you're talking about. I think I talk the same. But like at Toccoa, we use like certain words, like we use certain like phrases that if you go to TFC, you're like, man, you know he's from TFC because they use these kind of words. And like recently we use words like yeah, like all that kind of stuff. Or like, there's all these terms we use. And you can just tell they're from TFC because they use those terms. And like it's just like that. Like they begin to listen to Peter. They hear how Peter's talking. They're like, man, this guy's from Galilee. There's no other way that he's not related to Jesus because Jesus is from Galilee. His ministry was centered there. They're like, you know what, you were with Jesus because we saw you with him. Your accent clearly gives it away. And it says, after some while, they all came to him and said, you know, you were with Jesus. And so now they're all coming up to him and saying, you know what, you're with Jesus. It's very obvious. We saw you. The way you talk gives it away. And what Peter does is he says this. Then he began to call down curses on himself and swore to them, I do not know this man. And immediately a rooster crowed. And then Peter remembered the word Jesus had spoken. Before the rooster crows, you will disown me 3 times. And he went outside and wept bitterly. Like, I like how Luke describes it. Luke says, at that very moment he denied Jesus, a rooster crowed, and then Peter looked at Jesus, and Jesus looked at Peter, and he wept. At the very moment the rooster crowed, Jesus saw Peter in the midst of that crowd, and then Peter saw Jesus, and he knew right then and there, man, I just denied this man right now. And so he leaves, and he weeps. I think maybe the more I study this, the more I look at this, it's like, man, maybe even the greater pain is this. Maybe after following Jesus for 3 years now, and maybe after being with him every single day, maybe Peter finally realized for this moment that, man, I do not know this man. Because Jesus has been telling them what's going to happen to him. He's been telling them, I'm going to go to Jerusalem. And all the teachers there, all the elders of the law, like, they're all going to persecute me. They're going to capture me, they're going to kill me. On the 3rd day, I'm going to rise from the dead. And maybe at this moment, Peter realizes that, man, I don't know this Jesus. I don't know him. I don't know what he's talking about. You see, because maybe for us, like, I grew up in the church, man. Like, I've been doing this, I don't know, this church stuff for 20 years now, 20 plus years. But I don't want to go through this and not have this answered question. I mean, not have an answer for this question. Do I know this man? You see, for some, it can be so easy for us to just be here every single day, to be going to church every single week, and to not even know who Jesus is. And you can say I've been a Christian for X amount of years. I'm gonna say that doesn't really matter right now. What matters is if you know Jesus, if you know him. And at this point, Peter realizes, man, I don't know this man. You see, this is the last time that Peter saw Jesus in his earthly form, in this earthly body before he was resurrected. Can you imagine what was going through his head? Denying Jesus right then and there. Not even witnessing him being crucified on the cross. This is the last time that he saw Jesus. And so that's what brings us to John chapter 21. And this is why this passage is so, and this encounter with Jesus is so life-changing for Peter. Alright, so if you have your Bibles, we're going to go to John 21. I see a lot of phony Bibles out there. Your phone Bible, that's cool too. Alright. It says this, John chapter 21, verse 1. Afterward, Jesus appeared again to his disciples by the Sea of Tiberias, which is the Sea of Galilee. And it happened this way. Simon Peter, Thomas, called Didymus, Nathanael from Cana in Galilee, the sons of Zebedee, and 2 other disciples were with them. So there's 7 of them together. And so this, I'm going out to fish, Simon Peter told them. And they said, we'll go with you. So they went out right away and got to the boat, but that night they caught nothing. Alright, so there's 7 disciples there. Well, I don't know I did that. 7. Alright. There were 7 disciples there. Alright, and then Peter says, you know what, I'm going to go fishing. And so they all go, and they catch nothing. And I want to get this point straight right away, alright? At the very moment right here, starting the very chapter, we see here that when Christ is no longer there, when he's no longer tangibly there, it is so easy for Peter to go back to his old identity. You see that right here. It's so easy for him to just say, you know what, I'm going to go fishing. I'm going to do what I know what I do. And not only is it easy for him to do it, but it's so easy for him to influence those around him to do what he's doing. And see, if we're not careful, guys, when it comes to following Christ, because for us, we can't see Christ. At this moment, Peter's going through what we're going through. He can't physically see him. He's not tangibly there. At that moment, he goes back into his old identity. And guys, if we're not careful, and if we're not careful about how we're following Christ, it can be so easy for us to go back into our old identity, to identify ourselves with things that are not really us. to allow the sins that we continually commit to be who we are. It can be so easy for us to allow it to happen. And not only that, but when we do these things and when we openly do it, it influences everyone around us. Our community, the church, everybody here. Your sins impact each other. If you know that, whether you believe it or not, it does. They may never know what you're looking at. They may never know what you're doing. But it impacts how you live. And how you live impacts those around you. So we have to be careful here. We see here Peter, we see how easy it is for him to go back to the old identity. And we keep reading on, it says this. And then early in the morning, Jesus stood on the shore, but the disciples did not realize that it was Jesus. He called out to them, friends, have you any fish? No, they answered. He said, throw your net on the right side of the boat and you will find some. When they did, they were unable to haul the net because of the large number of fish. Then the disciples whom Jesus loved said to Peter, it is the Lord. As soon as Simon Peter heard him say it is the Lord, he wrapped his outer garments around him, for he had not taken it off, and he jumped into the water. Alright, so they fished all night. Haven't caught nothing yet. Sound kind of similar? Sea of Galilee, fish all night, caught nothing. Alright? And so they see this guy, we know it's Jesus, but they see this dude, they don't know who he is, and he says, hey friends, y'all caught anything? And they say, no. And so he tells them something here. He says, why don't you throw your net on the right side of the boat? You'll find some. And a lot of us, if we didn't know, like ancient Israel time, for fishing, like they don't use no rod and reel. They don't, you know, they use a cast net. Right? So for a cast net, I don't know if you guys have ever done, has anybody done cast net? Have you tried cast net before? Yeah, y'all know cast net. So like ancient Israel, right? Cast netting. Alright, first thing, in ancient Israel, everybody's mostly right-handed. To be left-handed is taboo. To be left-handed, you're considered a curse. So they even like go kill people like to some extremes in ancient Near Eastern culture if you're left-handed. Alright, so everybody's right-handed. So when you throw with your right hand, when you cast it with your right hand, which way do you follow through? You follow through to your left. So that means the net would tilt more towards the left. Alright? So you cast net, you throw it goes to the left. So they've been doing this all night. So here we got this man, he says, you know what? Why don't you throw your net on the right side of the boat? So instead of throwing to the left, why don't you try throwing it right? And I know the fishermen, so they're probably like, man, like this dude, like we could just like go like this and like throw it this way, like what makes a difference if you throw it to the left? I mean, throw it to the right. You see, so this here, when they did, so eventually they did it. Eventually they threw their nets to the right side of the boat. When they did it, they were unable to haul the net because of the large number of fish. And this says here, then the disciple whom Jesus loved, and we know this is going to be John. Alright, so John turns to Peter and he says, it is the Lord. And as soon as Simon Peter heard him, he wrapped his outer garments and he swam to Jesus. You see, because right then and there, John was like, man, we've seen this before. And we've experienced this kind of experience before. This was the first time we met Jesus. Something like this happened. We fished all night, caught nothing. He tells us to do something random that doesn't even make sense. And we catch this huge amount of fish. And at that moment he says, Peter, this is Jesus. And right then Peter gets it too. He says, yes, I know. And he swims to Jesus. You see, guys, for us, this is my encouragement right now. For us, at times when we don't see Jesus, at times when we're caught in our own identities, caught in our own sins, at times when we don't know where to go, remember what Christ first did for you. Remember how he saved you that first time. And for me, like, I think about my life, and I think about the first time I met Jesus, the first time I knew his love for real. And like, till this day, like, it still shakes me up because I can't even explain to you kind of love like that. When you experience that love for the first time, you know Jesus is real. And see, right there, Peter realized that, man, this is the same Jesus that did this to me when I first met him 3 years ago. And so he swims to Jesus. And see, for you guys, sometimes you're going to be caught in some cycles. Sometimes you're going to be caught in some sins. Sometimes you're not going to know what to do at those moments. Remember what Christ did for you and just go to him. Remember how he saved you and just go to him. And see, this is what Peter does. No questions asked. He don't say, all right, hold on, Jesus. Is this really you? I gotta make sure. I don't know. He doesn't even question that. He just goes. And I know this is Jesus because I felt it. I've experienced it before. And we see here, we read on, it says this. The other disciples followed in the boat